Thanks very much for being here, Minister. Welcome to our committee. I would like to speak about the preamble wording. You spoke in your opening statements about it sounds like you have a significant amount of concern of making sure that people who have mental illness are properly protected. That has always been one of my primary concerns about this particular matter. But when I look at this bill, the way that it's drafted, really the way that it's drafted regarding the provisions about eligibility for medical assistance in dying, as you refer to it, and grievous and irremediable medical condition, the first subsection refers to just grievous and irremediable medical condition, and then when you go to the definition of that's provided of grievous and irremediable medical condition, that's where it brings in the issue of physical or psychological suffering. So you really have to go to the preamble in order to obtain your government's assertion that psychological suffering as a sole basis is excluded from this bill. But having it in a preamble is a poor way to draft a piece of legislation, and because it doesn't have the necessary force of law. So if you have that significant concern about these particular issues, and when you testified before the House of Commons Committee earlier this week, you indicated your clear indication that this would be something to conform with Carter and to have as its intended purpose of medical assistance in dying to give competent adults who are in a path towards their natural death the choice of a peaceful passing. So if that is your real intention here, then why would you have that in the preamble, and why would you be studying the issues of mature minors and mental illness, which clearly Canadians do not want? They have indicated that loud and clear, and also it's just not a good way to draft a particular piece of legislation.
Well, thank you for the question, Senator. And just in terms of the eligibility criteria that are laid out in this piece of legislation, we sought to further define what grievous and irremediable means, and those are the 4 elements that you referenced in your question. And all of those elements need to be read together based on this entirety of the circumstances for the individual patient that is requesting medical assistance in dying. That patient could have a mental illness, but that mental illness cannot be the only or the sole basis upon which medical assistance in dying is provided. So it needs to be considered in the totality of the patient's circumstances. In terms of mature minors, in terms of mental illness as a sole basis, and in terms of advanced directives, we put that language into the preamble because there needs to be more study on those issues. Those 3 issues were not dealt with, as you know, Senator, in the Carter decision, and we have had an incredible diversity of opinion around those particular issues, and want to be able to engage in substantive study to understand the risks and the benefits around those particular issues in terms of medical assistance in dying. So it was put in the preamble in part to show our commitment to looking at those issues in more detail, as we heard quite loudly and clearly from many Canadians.
Also, if you intend to have safeguards in place to deal with people who may have a very serious physical illness but also have a mental illness as well, why wouldn't you have in place a longer waiting period, so perhaps they could actually consult a psychiatrist, which takes so long so many places in Canada? Why wouldn't you require a psychiatrist's approval? Why would you simply allow, just like anyone else, 2 nurses to provide approval, assess competency, and administer the assisted suicide?
Well, I mean, again, Senator, I appreciate the question, and the reality of all of the circumstances built into the eligibility criteria, particularly around grievous and irremediable. We wrote into the legislation a degree of flexibility to ensure or to provide medical practitioners with the ability, based upon their relationship with their patient, based upon the understanding of all of their medical circumstances in their totality, to make that determination. And I imagine this is something that Minister Philpott will be speaking about more when she presents before the committee. But from my understanding, physicians, if there is some uncertainty, may, as a normal course of their business, actually refer that out for further.
But it's not required if you wanted that one, not required.
Sorry, Senator Boyle.